Hey YouTube, welcome to another Valkyrie Connect video. My name is Akeo, and in this video we'll be looking over the basics of crowd control or CC. We'll go over the mechanics on how CC works, how it affects the target, as well as how it affects each other when it's overlapped. Before we move into CC, you'll have to understand how turns or cycles work. You'll notice that each effect on an item, they last for an X amount of turns, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 turns. There is the turn of activation, which you'll see here with the Glacial Cloak on Vidofnir. And you'll notice that each of his turns, which is his passive attack, it lasts until the third attack and then the effect dissipates. Keep in mind that buffs have a turn of activation which doesn't count for the turns that is supposed to persist. For example, Glacial Cloak lasts for 3 turns, you notice that there's a turn of activation, and then the 3 turns that it persists before it dissipates. The first crowd control we'll be looking into is the basic X amount of turns of persistence. You'll notice that I use Vidofnir's ability to use it as a timer on Luca. Every time the burn ticks, that counts as 1 turn for Luca, and you'll see that it ticks twice before the effect of stone dissipates. To recap what just happened, the reason why I use the burn ticking effect is because CC is based off of the target's turn. If you activate an ability halfway through a target's turn, it will seem as if it doesn't last as long, versus one that you've activated during the beginning of a target's turn. Next up, we'll be looking at how an ability will affect the target if it has a CC attached to it. The first unit that came to mind would be Besla due to her ability to have Reckoning on the target. Her Reckoning lasts for 3 turns. As you've noticed, she'll activate her ability, and you'll notice that every tick equals the unit's turns for a 3 tick total, which equals 3 turns total before it disappears. The next thing we'll be looking over is an item CC overlapped with a unit's ability CC. We'll be using Besla again as an example. Besla's X weapon puts a Reckoning effect for 2 turns on the target, and her ability puts a Reckoning effect on the target for 3 turns. You'll notice that I waited for a turn to bypass before I activate her ability. You'll notice that Reckoning is overlapped. So the effect isn't overwritten from the previous CC. It's overlapped, and that's why you'll be seeing 2 dots instead of 1. And then after the first dot disappears, you'll see just Besla's ability left. The next example isn't really an example of CC, but for you to have something to keep in mind while putting CC on a target is that you can use their regen ability or any type of buffs that they have up at the moment for an X amount of turns. You can use that as a timer as well. Keep in mind, not all CCs have a dot attached to them, so you'll have to use either a visual cue or just have the turns memorized yourself. And with visual cues, that can go to the buff that the unit has, or the CC that you have on it currently, such as Paralyze. You'll notice that every turn equals a tick of the Paralyze. It looks like a small lightning bolt hitting the unit. Other than that, you can use the actual unit's turn, where you can see an ability activate or their passive attack. For the next example, I'll be showing you a visual cue without the dot attached to it. I'll be using Thor as the example. You'll notice that his weapon puts Paralyze on the target, and then I used his ability to show that the ability will continue the persistence. But remember, it's not overwritten, it's overlapped. As you can see, each time the turn ticks, you'll see a visual cue from Paralyze where there are small lightning bolts radiating from the target. In the next example, we'll be going over 2 different CCs overlapped with each other and how they can affect the target. I'll be using Gylfi in the example with Staff of Anguish and Pumpkin Staff. The Staff of Anguish will fear, and then for the next turn, the Pumpkin Staff will cause a Confusion CC. You'll notice that the fear effect doesn't get overwritten by the confusion. It persists throughout until the effect dissipates, and then confusion will continue until that effect dissipates. What this is known as is CC chaining, where you move from one CC to another, keeping the target immobilized or unable to perform any action. To quickly recap everything that we've just gone over, buffs have a turn of activation and then a turn of persistence. So if you have an item that lasts for 3 turns and you put it in slot 1 is the turn of activation, and then it'll last for the continuing 3 turns. For CC though, on the turn of activation where you put the CC on the target, that also counts as the turn of persistence. All CC that you put on a target, excluding wounds where you have earth, water, dark, light, and fire wounds, overlap. So you have multiple poisons going on, burns, or reckoning going on, they will all overlap each other and not overwrite. But wounds have an exception to the rule where you cannot stack the effect. So for example, you can't put 2 light wounds on a target and expect 100% extra damage. Putting multiple CC effect on a target will not overwrite the previous one, but there will be multiple effects on that target. Just as you putting the same type of CC on a target such as burn, they will stack on each other. Keep in mind that whether it's a buff, debuff, or CC, it's based off of the target's turns and not the initiator's turns. For example, if you use a Valhalla sword from Thor and he petrifies Luca, it's not based off of Thor's turns. Is based off of Luca's turns, and vice versa. If you put a Glacial Cloak on Vidofnir, it's based off of his turns. I hope that you found this information helpful, and if you like the video, please like the video. If you like this type of content, please subscribe. If you aren't already involved in the Valkyrie Connect community, I'll provide a link to the Reddit and Discord below. And if you aren't already following me on Twitter, I'll provide to the link of that below as well. And you can see what I've been up to in the game as well as some Japanese high client news. And until next time guys, take care.